My name is Fanny Blake, and today marks my 72nd birthday, a day that should have been filled with joy and celebration at my Riverside home. Instead, it became a nightmare when my own daughter Eleanor and her husband Thomas revealed their true intentions. I noticed their cold stares as they whispered to each other during the party, completely unaware that I had overheard their sinister plan the night before. Little did I know they were plotting to claim my inheritance by any means necessary. Before I tell you how my own flesh and blood tried to end my life, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you value family loyalty. Life in rural Maine has always been peaceful for me, especially in our beautiful riverside property that stretches across 6 acres of lush greenery and towering pine trees. My late husband Harold and I purchased this land when we were just newlyweds, building our dream home brick by brick over the decades. We spent 50 wonderful years together before he passed away 3 years ago, leaving me with not just memories, but also a substantial inheritance. Harold was always meticulous about financial planning. His life insurance policy, our joint savings, and the property itself amounted to about $1.2 million. Not a fortune by today's standards, but certainly enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my years, and still leave something meaningful for our 3 children. Eleanor is our eldest at 45. She was always the ambitious one, working her way up in corporate banking, with determination that sometimes bordered on ruthlessness. James, our middle child at 43, followed a different path, becoming a high school teacher, with a gentle spirit much like his father. Sophia, our youngest at 38, carved her own way as a nurse, always putting others before herself. I remember when Eleanor was younger before she met Thomas. She would visit every Sunday without fail, bringing fresh flowers from the market and spending hours helping me in the garden. We would talk about everything and nothing. The bond between us unbreakable, or so I thought. Then Thomas entered the picture 5 years ago. Charming, articulate, and successful as a real estate developer, he seemed perfect on paper. But there was something in his eyes that never quite matched his smile. Harold noticed it too, mentioning once that Thomas reminded him of a poker player, always holding cards close to his chest. After their wedding, Eleanor changed. Her visits became less frequent, and when she did come, Thomas was always with her. Their questions about my finances grew more persistent. "Mom, have you updated your will recently? Don't you think this house is too big for just you now?" Small comments that seemed innocent at the time, but were actually laying groundwork for something sinister. James and Sophia started expressing concerns about 6 months ago. James called me one evening after Eleanor and Thomas had visited. "Mom, I don't want to worry you, but I'm concerned about how interested they seem in your assets," he said cautiously. "Oh, James, they're just making sure I'm taken care of." I defended not wanting to believe my own daughter could have ulterior motives. Sophia was more direct during her weekly visit. "Mom, promise me you won't sign anything Eleanor or Thomas put in front of you without having your lawyer look at it first." She insisted, her nurse's intuition sensing danger before I could. For my 72nd birthday, Eleanor insisted on hosting the celebration at my home. She arrived early that morning with Thomas carrying boxes of decorations and groceries for the dinner. I was touched by their apparent thoughtfulness, completely unaware of what was actually being planned. The house transformed under Eleanor's direction. Streamers in my favorite colors hung from the ceiling. Fresh flowers adorned every table, and Thomas set up chairs on the dock by the river for what Eleanor called a special sunset toast. As I helped arrange napkins at the dining table, I overheard Thomas whisper to Eleanor in the kitchen, "Just stick to the plan. By tomorrow, everything will be ours." A chill ran down my spine, but I convinced myself I had misheard. After all, what plan could possibly involve my birthday celebration? I would soon find out just how naive that thought was. The morning of my 72nd birthday began with unusual extravagance. Eleanor and Thomas arrived at my door carrying beautifully wrapped packages topped with elaborate bows. Thomas handed me a small velvet box containing a pair of diamond earrings that must have cost several $1,000s. "These are too much," I protested, knowing Eleanor and Thomas had complained about financial struggles just months earlier when discussing a home renovation project. "Nothing's too much for you, Mom," Eleanor replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We wanted this birthday to be special." Thomas presented the second gift, a designer handbag I had once admired in a magazine. Again, the expense seemed wildly out of character for them. As I thanked them, Thomas casually mentioned the champagne toast they had planned for sunset. "The view of the river at dusk is spectacular," he said. "We thought it would be the perfect way to cap off your special day." While Eleanor busied herself with birthday decorations, I noticed Thomas wandering down to the riverside. From the kitchen window, I watched as he tested the dock's stability, then seemed to study the depth and current of the water with unusual interest. When he noticed me watching, he quickly pretended to be admiring the view. James and his wife Katie arrived around noon, bringing a homemade cake and their warm, genuine affection. While Eleanor and Thomas continued preparations in the backyard, James pulled me aside in the living room. "Mom, has Eleanor been asking about your will again?" He questioned, concern etching his features. "Not directly," I admitted, "but she did suggest I should consider updating it since Harold passed." James's expression darkened. "She called me last week asking if I knew who your lawyer was. Said she wanted to arrange a surprise for you, but it felt off." Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Sophia apologizing that her shift at the hospital would run late. "I'll be there as soon as I can, Mom, but please promise me something." Her voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Don't go anywhere alone with Eleanor and Thomas, especially not near the water." "And the water?" "Why would you say that?" I asked, confused by her specific warning. "Just trust me, Mom. Wait until I get there before any riverside activities," she insisted before hanging up. Sophia's warning left me unsettled, but I had little time to dwell on it as Eleanor appeared smoothly interrupting my conversation with James. Every time I tried to speak privately with other family members throughout the afternoon, she would materialize, steering conversations away from anything substantial. During the birthday lunch, Thomas sat beside me, peppering me with strange questions. "You never learned to swim properly, did you, Fanny?" he asked with an odd intensity. "Harold tried to teach me years ago, but I never got comfortable in deep water," I admitted. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," he replied, exchanging a quick glance with Eleanor. "The current in the river seems strong today." Later, while Eleanor distracted the other guests with photo albums, I went to her purse looking for some aspirin for a developing headache. Instead, I found her tablet. A notification popped up from her lawyer's office. Normally I would never pry, but Sophia's warning echoed in my mind. I tapped the screen and found myself staring at a draft of a modified will supposedly mine, giving Eleanor power of attorney and primary control over all my assets. My hands trembled as I quickly returned the tablet. Eleanor found me moments later, her expression shifting from surprise to calculation when she saw where I'd been standing. "Looking for something, Mom?" she asked, voice honeyed but eyes sharp. "Just some aspirin," I replied, watching her face carefully. "I found an interesting document on your tablet instead." Her explanation came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Oh, that's just something my lawyer sent for review for my own estate planning. Nothing for you to worry about." The birthday dinner began with an undercurrent of tension beneath the surface smiles. I could feel Thomas watching my every move as Eleanor encouraged everyone to enjoy the special meal they had prepared. The dinner table gleamed with Eleanor's meticulous attention to detail. Fine china that had belonged to my mother sparkled under candlelight, and the spread was impressive prime rib cooked to perfection, roasted vegetables arranged like a magazine photo, and a selection of Harold's favorite wines. "A toast," Thomas announced, raising a crystal flute of champagne, "to Fanny and many more healthy, happy years." The champagne tasted strange, slightly bitter beneath its sweetness. I noticed Eleanor watching intently as I took my first sip, so I pretended to drink more than I actually did, discreetly emptying some into a nearby potted plant, when attention shifted elsewhere. "We should take some pictures by the river before we lose the light," Eleanor suggested as dinner concluded. "And don't forget, we have that special sunset toast planned." "Are you feeling all right, Mom?" James asked, studying my face. "You look a bit flushed." I did feel oddly dizzy, despite barely drinking any champagne. "Just a little tired from all the excitement," I assured him, though suspicion was growing in my mind. "Some fresh air will do you good," Thomas insisted, already standing behind my chair. "Let's head down to the dock now." As Eleanor collected a fresh bottle of champagne and glasses, I overheard Thomas whisper to her in the kitchen. "The medication should be working by now." A cold dread settled in my stomach. The strange taste in the champagne, their insistence on getting me near the water, Sophia's warning, the draft will on Eleanor's tablet, all suddenly connected in a terrifying picture. The walk to the riverside dock felt like a march to execution. Eleanor linked her arm through mine, unusually affectionate as she guided me down the sloping lawn toward the water. "Remember how Dad used to take us fishing off this dock?" she reminisced with fabricated nostalgia. "You would always pack those peanut butter sandwiches and thermoses of hot chocolate." "That was James who loved fishing," I corrected her gently. "You always refuse to bait your own hook." A flicker of annoyance crossed her face before her mask of daughterly affection returned. "Of course, silly me. So many wonderful memories here by the river." Thomas positioned himself between me and the path back to the house, effectively cutting off my escape route. The setting sun cast long shadows across the wooden planks of the dock, and the river below looked particularly dark and forbidding. "A special toast?" Eleanor announced, handing out fresh glasses of champagne. She raised hers with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "To new beginnings." Something in her tone sent shivers down my spine. Glancing back toward the house, I caught sight of James watching concernedly from the kitchen window. He had noticed something was wrong and was already moving toward the door. Eleanor and Thomas exchanged a look, and then both suddenly moved toward me, simultaneously, their intentions clear in their synchronized movements. The push came from behind Thomas's strong hands, shoving forcefully between my shoulder blades. Eleanor's face transformed before my eyes, her practiced smile melting into an expression of hateful determination as I began to fall. Time seemed to slow in those terrible moments. The wooden dock disappeared from beneath my feet. The cold air rushed past me. I caught a final glimpse of my daughter's face, not regretful, but resolute before the dark water rushed up to meet me. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs. The April river was frigid, the shock of cold disorienting me further. I had never been a strong swimmer, and whatever they had slipped into my champagne made my limbs feel unnaturally heavy and unresponsive. Through the murky water, I looked up to see two silhouettes on the dock watching. Neither made any move to help as I flailed and sputtered, fighting to keep my head above water. The current was stronger than it appeared from the surface, pulling me away from the dock and toward the deeper center of the river. "Help!" I managed to cry out between desperate gasps for air. "James? Someone!" Eleanor's voice floated down, chillingly calm. "It's almost over, Mother. Just let go and it will be quick." For a brief moment, something flickered across Eleanor's face, perhaps a shadow of the daughter I had raised. She took a half-step forward as if considering jumping in to save me, but Thomas gripped her arm tightly, holding her back. "Stick to the plan," I heard him growl. "Think about what we stand to gain." My clothes grew heavier as they absorbed the water, dragging me down. My legs kicked frantically but with diminishing strength. The medication they had slipped me was taking fuller effect, making each movement more difficult than the last. In that moment, facing death at the hands of my own child, something awoke within me, a primal survival instinct I didn't know I possessed. Harold's voice seemed to echo in my mind from one of our swimming lessons decades ago. "Don't fight the current directly, Fanny. Move across it." With what little strength remained, I changed tactics, no longer trying to swim back to the dock, but angling my body to move laterally across the current toward a fallen tree branch, extending into the water about 20 yards downstream. From the house, I heard shouting. James had seen what happened and was racing down the lawn toward the river. Thomas turned to intercept him, moving with surprising speed to block his path. "She fell in," Thomas shouted, creating his alibi in real time. "She's disoriented. I'll get a life preserver." James ignored him, shoving past forcefully enough to send Thomas stumbling. "Mom!" he screamed, already kicking off his shoes. "Hold on!" The struggle to stay afloat became more desperate with each passing second. Water filled my nose and mouth when I failed to time my breaths with the small waves. My vision began to darken around the edges, my lungs burning for oxygen. As I slipped beneath the surface once more, a strange calm began to replace the panic. Harold's face appeared in my mind, looking just as he had on our wedding day. Was this what dying felt like? This peaceful surrender. A splash nearby barely registered until strong arms wrapped around me, pulling upward. James had reached me, his teacher's strength put to vital use as he fought against both the current and my waterlogged weight. Another splash followed, and through blurry vision I saw Sophia, who must have just arrived, diving in from the shore to help her brother. Together they dragged me toward the riverbank, away from the dock, where Eleanor stood frozen, the reality of what she had participated in finally seeming to dawn on her. "Breathe, Mom. Come on, breathe." Sophia's voice penetrated the fog as I lay on the muddy riverbank coughing up river water. Her nursing training took over as she turned me onto my side, ensuring my airway remained clear. James knelt beside me, soaking wet and panting from exertion, his eyes wild with a mixture of relief and fury as he looked from me to Eleanor and Thomas on the dock. "What did you do?" he shouted at them, his voice breaking with emotion. "What did you do to her?" Eleanor and Thomas rushed down from the dock, their faces masks of false concern already constructing their narrative. "She slipped," Thomas insisted, his voice carrying just the right amount of distress. "We reached for her, but couldn't grab her in time." "That's not true," I gasped between coughs, my voice weak but determined. "They pushed me in. They were talking about medication. In the champagne." Sophia immediately checked my pulse, finding it dangerously slow. "Her heart rate isn't right. This isn't just from the fall or cold water." She turned accusingly toward her sister. "What did you give her?" Eleanor's composure began to crack. "It wasn't my idea," she whispered, her eyes darting to Thomas. "He said it would just make her sleepy, make it look like an accident." "Shut up," Thomas hissed, grabbing Eleanor's arm roughly. Sophia already had her phone out, dialing 911 with one hand while keeping the other on my pulse. "I need an ambulance and police at 1487 Riverside Lane," she reported. "Attempted murder and suspected poisoning." Thomas, seeing his plan unraveling, turned to flee, but James was faster, tackling him to the ground. They struggled in the mud, Thomas's desperation making him dangerous as he landed a punch to James's jaw. The commotion attracted attention from neighboring properties. Walter Jenkins, my neighbor of 20 years, and a retired police officer, came running from his house adjacent to mine. "What in God's name is happening here?" he demanded, taking in the scene with professional assessment. "They tried to drown our mother," Sophia explained quickly, still monitoring my vitals. "The man is trying to escape." Walter immediately moved to assist James, helping to restrain Thomas until authorities arrived. Eleanor stood paralyzed, watching her carefully constructed life collapse around her. The next hours passed in a blur of emergency lights, uniformed officers, and medical personnel. Paramedics wrapped me in thermal blankets, started an IV, and loaded me into an ambulance. Police officers separated everyone, taking initial statements while securing the scene. Detective Marissa Sanchez led the investigation, her sharp eyes missing nothing as she coordinated the collection of evidence. The champagne glasses were bagged for testing. Officers found a container of prescription sedatives in Thomas's jacket pocket. The most damning evidence came from Thomas's phone. While he initially refused to unlock it, a warrant was quickly obtained given the circumstances. Text messages between him and Eleanor revealed weeks of planning. Insurance policy is in place, just need her signature on the updated will, then the accident can happen. River is running high with spring melt, favorable conditions next week. The investigation revealed that Thomas had secretly taken out a life insurance policy on me 6 months earlier, listing Eleanor as the beneficiary. He had forged my signature on the application using his connections in the insurance industry to expedite approval without proper verification. The champagne tested positive for a powerful sedative one that could have proven fatal when combined with submersion in cold water. My accident had been meticulously planned to appear as a tragic drowning, with Eleanor and Thomas positioned to inherit everything immediately. As I watched my oldest daughter being handcuffed and placed in a police car, conflicting emotions warred within me. This was my child whom I had nursed through childhood illnesses, taught to ride a bicycle, consoled through her first heartbreak. Now she was a stranger capable of matricide for financial gain. The hospital admitted me for observation overnight, treating me for hypothermia and monitoring for effects of the sedative. James and Sophia refused to leave my side, taking turns sleeping in the uncomfortable visitor's chair. Their unwavering love stood in stark contrast to Eleanor's betrayal, a reminder that while one child had chosen greed, two had risked their lives to save mine. The weeks following my near death unfolded like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The investigation revealed layers of deception I never could have imagined from my own daughter and her husband. Detective Sanchez called me to the station to review what they had uncovered. "Mrs. Blake, I'm afraid Thomas Williams has a history we've only just connected. Under different names, he's been linked to 2 other cases involving elderly relatives of his former partners." "You mean he's done this before?" I asked, my hands trembling around the paper cup of station coffee. "Never successfully completed it, but yes, there are strong similarities. In both previous cases, the investigation stalled due to lack of evidence. The victims were hesitant to believe their loved ones could be involved," she explained gently. Eleanor maintained that Thomas had manipulated and coerced her, that she had gotten in too deep and didn't know how to escape his influence. "He convinced me you were becoming mentally unfit to manage your affairs," she told me during a supervised pre-trial visit, tears streaming down her face. "He said we were protecting you from yourself." I wanted to believe her, desperately needed to find some explanation that would allow me to still love my daughter. But the evidence told a different story. Eleanor had been an active participant, researching medication dosages, practicing signatures to match mine, and calculating exactly how deep the river ran off our dock. The court proceedings were excruciating. Sitting in that witness box, recounting how my own child had tried to murder me, felt like ripping open my heart for public display. The media latched onto the story, the sensationalist headlines impossible to avoid. "Birthday betrayal daughter's deadly inheritance scheme." James and Sophia never wavered in their support. They took turns staying at my house, neither willing to leave me alone as I jumped at shadows and flinched at unexpected noises. Their own pain at their sister's betrayal was evident, yet they focused on helping me heal. My neighbors and friends from church rallied around me as well. Casseroles appeared on my doorstep daily. Pastor Davis organized a prayer circle, Walter Jenkins installed a security system free of charge showing me how to use the panic button he added near my bed. In the courtroom, Thomas and Eleanor presented starkly different faces to the jury. Thomas remained defiant, cold, his eyes calculating even as evidence mounted against him. Eleanor appeared broken, often crying quietly during testimony. Whether her remorse was genuine or a performance for lighter sentencing, I couldn't be certain. The prosecution offered Eleanor a deal, pled guilty to attempted second-degree murder with a reduced sentence in exchange for testifying against Thomas. She accepted detailing their months of planning and Thomas's previous attempts with other victims. "And you went along with this plan willingly?" the prosecutor asked her during direct examination. "Yes," she admitted, unable to look at me. "I convinced myself that Mom was declining mentally, that we would be managing her money better than she could. Then Thomas started talking about the river and how simple it could be, and somehow I let myself believe it was the right thing." Thomas received 40 years without possibility of parole for attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy fraud, and elder abuse. Eleanor's sentence was 12 years with possibility of parole after 8. As they led her from the courtroom, she finally looked directly at me, mouthing, "I'm sorry," before disappearing through the door. My feelings about her reduced sentence remained complicated. Part of me felt she deserved the same punishment as Thomas, while another part remembered the little girl who once picked wildflowers for my birthday. The mother in me wanted to believe in redemption, even as the victim in me struggled with forgiveness. With the trial concluded, I faced practical decisions about my future. I updated my will with ironclad provisions and appointed James as my healthcare proxy. I temporarily moved in with Sophia and her husband while recovering, finding the Riverside home too full of traumatic memories. 3 months after the incident, a letter arrived from Eleanor in prison. "I know I can never undo what I've done," she wrote. "Thomas got into my head, but I made my own choices. I'll understand if you never forgive me, but I need you to know that I wake up every day hating myself for betraying you." I read the letter multiple times, searching for truth between the lines, wondering if the daughter I raised still existed somewhere inside the woman who had stood watching as I nearly drowned. The 6 months following my near-death experience became a journey of rediscovery and healing. Initially, nightmares plagued me nightly, vivid recreations of water filling my lungs, while my daughter watched impassively from above. Dr. Lisa Matthews, a trauma counselor specializing in family betrayal, helped me process these terrors. "What you're experiencing is a normal response to profound trauma," she assured me during our weekly sessions. "When violence comes from someone we love, someone we should be able to trust implicitly, it shatters our sense of safety in the world." Healing began with small steps. First, acknowledging the full extent of what happened without minimizing or making excuses for Eleanor's actions. Then reconnecting with old friends I had neglected during my years of widowhood, rebuilding a support network beyond my children. Margaret Johnson, my college roommate who had retired to Portland, became a particularly steady presence. Unlike others who sometimes treated me like fragile glass, she offered practical support alongside unflinching honesty. "You didn't create the monster your daughter became," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "Thomas may have been the mastermind, but Eleanor made her choices. Your love wasn't insufficient, Fanny. Some people just choose darkness." Those words, harsh as they were, freed something inside me. The guilt I had been harboring, the endless questioning of where I had gone wrong as a mother, began to loosen its grip. With Margaret's encouragement, I started a support group for survivors of elder abuse and betrayal. Our first meeting, held in the community room of the local library, drew 7 attendees, each carrying stories that echoed pieces of my own. By the 3rd month, we had grown to 20 members, creating a safe space where pain could be acknowledged and resilience celebrated. The Riverside property that had been my home for 50 years became impossible to enjoy. Every glimpse of the water brought flashbacks. Every creak of the dock sent my heart racing. After much deliberation, I decided to sell. James and Sophia supported my decision, helping me sort through decades of accumulated possessions. The process became unexpectedly therapeutic, allowing me to preserve meaningful memories while releasing the physical space where trauma had occurred. I purchased a smaller home in a quiet neighborhood just 10 minutes from James and 15 from Sophia. The single-story craftsman had a garden perfect for my heirloom roses and enough space for grandchildren to visit, but no water feature more threatening than a bird bath. Learning to trust again proved the most difficult challenge. When my new neighbor Barbara brought over welcome cookies, my first instinct was to question her motives. Dr. Matthews helped me develop tools to distinguish between healthy caution and paralyzing suspicion. Trust isn't an all-or-nothing proposition, she reminded me. You can choose to extend trust in small, manageable increments, building gradually with people who prove worthy. 3 months after selling the Riverside home, I received another letter from Eleanor. This one contained no excuses, just an acknowledgement of the pain she had caused and news that she had started counseling in prison. She didn't ask for forgiveness, or a visit simply closed with, "I understand if I never hear from you again. I'm trying to become someone better than the person who hurt you." After much consideration and several sessions with Dr. Matthews, I decided to visit Eleanor once. The prison visiting room was stark and institutional, nothing like the warm, comfortable spaces where I had created so many memories with my daughter. Eleanor looked older, her designer clothes replaced by a standard-issue uniform, her carefully maintained appearance simplified by prison limitations. When she saw me, her composure cracked tears, flowing immediately. "I didn't think you would come," she whispered. "I needed to see you," I replied honestly. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I needed to look you in the eye as the person I am now, not the victim I was then." Our conversation was difficult, filled with painful truths. I set clear boundaries about our future relationship, explaining that while I might eventually forgive our connection, would never return to what it once was. Trust, once shattered, so completely could not be fully restored. As my personal healing progressed, I found purpose in advocating for elder protection. I worked with Detective Sanchez to develop a community education program helping seniors identify warning signs of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. My story, though painful to share, resonated with many. Local news featured our initiative, bringing attention to the often hidden problem of family-perpetrated elder abuse. When Thomas filed an appeal of his conviction, I testified again, ensuring his dangerous pattern would remain interrupted by continued incarceration. The approach of my 73rd birthday brought complex emotions. James and Sophia wanted to host a celebration, but the anniversary of the trauma gave me pause. After reflection, I decided to reclaim the day to create new associations that honored my survival rather than my victimization. We gathered at my new home, a smaller group than the year before, but composed entirely of people whose love was genuine. Margaret flew in from Portland. Walter and his wife brought their famous peach cobbler. Dr. Matthews attended not as my therapist, but as a friend. James and Sophia surrounded me with their families, their children's laughter, the sweetest music. No riverside toast, no elaborate scheme, just authentic connection with people who had stood beside me through the darkest chapter of my life. As I blew out the candles on a cake decorated simply with fresh flowers, I made a wish, not for myself, but for others who might be facing similar betrayals, that they would find the strength I had discovered within myself. Looking around at the genuine smiles surrounding me, I realized that Harold's financial inheritance had never been my most valuable possession. The true wealth in my life was the capacity to rebuild, to find joy again, after devastation, to trust selectively but authentically. At 73, I finally understand that my greatest inheritance wasn't Harold's money at all. It was learning who would stand beside me when the current pulled strongest against me. Has anyone in your life surprised you with their loyalty during difficult times? Please share in the comments below, and if my story has touched you, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need to hear that survival and renewal are possible even after the deepest betrayal. Thank you for listening, and remember to treasure the people who prove their love through actions, not just words.